Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to the PsyD program's open house. This is one of four. So if you want to join any other future upcoming open houses in the next few months, you can register for those if, maybe you have to hop out of the session, or if you just want to, keep learning more about the PsyD program and ask your questions. So to start off with some introductions, my name is Robin. I work for the admissions team. I'm a senior admissions counselor, and I primarily work with our doctoral students, our PhD and our PsyD, as well as our master's in psychology program. And I know we are also joined by Dr. Kimberly Hill, as well as two students in the program, Jesse and Miriam, that will also be here to answer any other questions that you may have. And I also want to go over the agenda for today. So we are going to be going over some slides. And during those slides, you'll learn more about the program as well as some of the admissions requirements. And then after that, if we have time for questions, we'll open up the floor. However, I just want to remind everyone, usually in these sessions, there is a lot of questions. So if we can't get to it, I will have my email at the end of the slide and you can reach out to me. We can set up a meeting. I could also connect you with current students and help you answer anything that you have in mind. So since it is 12:04, we will get started. And I will share our slides. All right, and then I will let Dr. Hill take it away from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. I'm, first of all, super impressed to see approximately 80 people here on a Labor Day weekend. So your commitment to your professional growth is evident already. So thanks for joining us. So I'll give a brief overview of some very high-level highlights about the program, and then hopefully have some time for some questions for myself and Miriam, Jesse, and Robin. So our current leadership team is, I'm the director, been involved in the program from the beginning. So we are over 20 years old. We're 21 now, so we can legally drink. But it's great to be, out of our infancy and our adolescence and firmly into adulthood. And then Stacey Boyko is our senior program manager. She's not here today. And then I have two really incredible associate directors, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Kent. Can you, next slide, please? So we opened our doors in 2002, and the program was Palo Alto. So at that point, the program, the school was called Pacific Graduate School of Psychology. And they have had a APA accredited PhD program for many years, since the 80s. And so they had this amazing idea for this consortial PsyD program. They approached us at Stanford and we joined forces and again, opened our doors in 2002. And we really were excited to design a program that was designed for folks who are really academically minded, research focused people who want to be clinicians. So want to know how to use the research, maybe contribute to research, but not have that as the driving force of their doctoral training. So on a continuum of really researchy PhD and really clinical PsyD, we are more of a scientifically focused PsyD, so we're close to the middle. And I would say for those of you also thinking about the PhD program at PAU, looking at that, that is a very clinically focused PhD program. So this is where the two doctoral programs are on that continuum at PAU. So we've been accredited essentially from the beginning. You can't become accredited until you have a student in every phase of the program. So we were accredited as soon as we could and been continuously accredited. So it's a 5-year, very full-time program. Next slide, please. So consortium students, like who eventually comes here and decides to devote 5 years of their life to this journey and to this program. So this is a snapshot of our current rising second years, I suppose. And so as you'll see, we have 30 students in every cohort capped. And they come from all over the world. Primarily, I would say about, in every cohort of 30, we probably have about 8 or so from the California area, huge number from the East Coast, New York, Boston, that area, and then a smattering in between. And then 2 or 3 average international students in every cohort. The interest areas are all over the map. We very intentionally do not have tracks because psychology is too interesting, too vast to have it all figured out at this juncture. And that does not mean that our students come out as just generalists across the board. Everyone is graduating with a very strong burgeoning area of specialty. Neuropsych actually that's a bad example. If you have a neuropsych interest, with the idea that you want to eventually become board certified, I'd actually direct you to apply to the PhD program at PAU because they have a really great track with a lot of the coursework already embedded. So that's the one area that that I would definitely direct people to another program. We have people come out who end up with great neuropsych careers, but there's like a little extra work to find the coursework and those types of things. So every one of our students has a unique narrative and trajectory that they decide based on the practica they choose, the dissertation topic they choose, those types of things. So this is just a visual snapshot of our rising second years. Next slide, please. That was day 1 of their orientation last year. So our students, this was PGSP's brainchild, this program. And so our students are, and you can't have a degree conferred from 2 institutions. So our students are 100% Palo Alto University students and 50% Stanford affiliated students. So what does that mean? That means that you get all of the benefits of being a PAU student and a ton of benefits of being a Stanford affiliate. And we're accredited by APA as a consortium. So what we try to do is everything 50-50. But what's great is that the partnership is so strong that if there is an area that one institution does better or just has more resources in this particular area than the other, then it doesn't have to be 50-50. So for example, you have opportunities to do supplemental practica, starting in year 1 all the way through the time that you graduate. You can do them 2 at a time if you wish. 95% of those are at Stanford in the psychiatry department, and that's simply because that's where the clinical, most of the clinical opportunities are. And so we don't have to do that 50-50, but classes are 50-50. So down to the unit every year, I have a little bit of a grace of 6 units, but down to the unit, half the classes are taught by PAU faculty, half by Stanford faculty. Your PAU courses are typically on a PAU campus and the Stanford classes on a Stanford campus. Your dissertation committees, we have minimum number of committee members of 2. So you choose your chair based on your interest area and without worrying about institution. And so then then you realize, okay, this person is a Stanford person. I need to have at least one representative from PAU, and you can have more if you wish. Next slide, please. Actually, can you skip to the next slide? Thanks. So this is what 5 years looks like in the program. It makes it really easy to look, oh, this is all you have to do to get your doctorate, one sheet. But each row represents a year in the program. So year 1, what you'll notice is that the classes really drop off. There's a number of classes in the 3rd year, but most of those are electives. So in year 1, you're in the classroom a lot, taking the core required classes from APA and your foundational assessment sequence and your foundational psychotherapy sequence. You always have classes 3 days a week so that we leave 2 full days for you to engage in extracurricular activities that you are interested in, supplemental practica, getting involved in research, TAing, doing homework, yoga, whatever you'd like to do on those other 2 days. At the end of this is actually flipped because we flipped the sequence, sorry, but the comprehensive exam at the end of the year should say assessment. We used to have stats first, but then we decided to flip and make assessment first, so that you'd have statistics closer to when you're using it for your dissertation, and have assessment earlier so you could jump on assessment opportunities as soon as they popped up in your practica. Then in your 2nd year, your classes start to drop off. That's every summer in between is when you start your new practicum. So you have 3 full years of practicum, primary practicum. That's depending on the year, 15 to 20-ish hours a week in a practica. We intentionally never have classes in the summer so that you can wrap up with your old practicum, start with your new one. You're in a new setting, new supervisors, new types of patients, get that going before we layer classes back on. So in year 2, it's fewer classes. The classes are all super applied. And so you're directly using those with your clients. And then at the end of that year, you've just finished your stats sequence, and you have your stats comp, which is a little mini fake research project that you do that helps you learn how to write your dissertation down the road. Then in year 3, there's actually only 1 required class, actual class, each quarter: supervision, medical illness, psych symptoms, and psychopharm. Those are the 3. And then you can choose electives. And these are just some examples of the elective options. And then these prep sequences are support. Disc prep, your whole cohort of 30 gets broken up into groups of 6 or so. And with 1 faculty member, you meet regularly, and it's essentially group therapy for your dissertation. So you get together, you talk about your hopes and dreams and what your thoughts are, and the faculty member and your peers help you think about, oh, that person, have you heard of that person in their research? That would be a great person. And so the idea would be at the end of your 1st quarter to come out with your idea and your committee. Quarter 2, you keep meeting and you keep moving it along, and you start writing your methods and that type of thing. And the internship prep sequence is my baby. And so really love that juncture of the whole trajectory. That's what led me to my work with APIC. APIC is the organization that orchestrates the internship match. So I was elected to the APIC board for a couple of terms and just wrapped up my 6 years on the APIC board. My primary role on the APIC board was as the it's titled APPI coordinator. The internship application is title of the acronym is APPI. And so that role involves enhancing the application process every year, working with the directors of the doctoral programs, the internship training directors, the applicants, the letter writers, and the 5 different portals that are involved in the applications, and helping students and DCTs throughout the year answer their questions about how do I categorize this therapeutic hour, this hour, da 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 da. So the reason I even go into all that detail is just to highlight that my love for that stuff and how I really just think that you can make that there's a lot of stress wrapped around that process. And I think you genuinely, what I really love is when I can get my students to enjoy the process and get excited about what this next life chapter is going to be. So that prep sequence starts in the spring, just 2 or 3 meetings in the spring to help our students know what's coming for the next year. And then year 4 looks deceptively light. So I continue the internship prep sequence. I hold seminars. I invite internship training directors and alums, who some of them are internship training directors at this point, to come and talk to our students, talk about the various internships. And then also you get all the do's and don'ts of the process. And then we give you an internship advisor who holds your hand through the application process. The internship application process is essentially what you're about to go through with graduate school application process. Just lots of documents, essays. Yeah, there's 4 essays, CVs, cover letters, all of that jazz. So we line edit all of that and then help you with your site list, just like what you're about to go through. It's really, truly is really about finding the right fit of the program. And then we do mock interviewing and that type of thing. So again, that 4th year looks deceptively light. In addition to internship prep, you'll be doing a primary practicum. So that will be, and it's a little bit more intense in that year because this is your 3rd one. So potentially up to 24 hours a week, typically 2.5 to 3 days a week. And you're really churning and burning on your dissertation. So it's a good year. It feels much more autonomous because you're not in the classroom. Then the 5th year, you're on your APA accredited doctoral internship. And which again, you don't really feel like a student in that 5th year because you're just going and doing a clinical job full time and getting paid. and the finish line is right in front of you. So that's a really great year. Awesome. I'll move along. So practicum opportunities and program are significant in our program. A lot of that, I'd love to say, oh, we made it happen. To some extent, sure, but part of it is just being in a great area like the Bay Area. So programs that are like New York and LA have just a lot more options than some of the more rural programs. As I mentioned, you can do supplemental practicum as early as your 1st year and throughout your time if you wish. These are really, really up to you if you want to do them. There's no pressure to do them. Our students tend to do an average of 2 to 3 in the tenure of their program here. And I think that really just speaks to the PsyD-ness of our students in that they really, truly want to be the best clinicians possible and just take advantage of all the possible clinical training opportunities there are. And so supplemental practica are supposed to be really much smaller commitments and ways for you to dip your toe into a potential interest area and really just check it out. And so you might be running a DBT group with a faculty member, do parent training workshops, it'd be a therapist on a clinical trial. They're really all over the map. The psychiatry department at Stanford is huge and lots of clinics. And so many, many supplemental opportunities. The foundational, intermediate, and advanced practicum are the 15 to 24 hour practicums that I was referencing. We have several captive sites to our program. Stanford Inpatient, at Granowski, which is PAU's captive community-based low-fee training clinic. There's a general clinic, so you treat anybody that walks in the door, from child to elderly. And then there's a couple really cool specialty clinics, including La Clínica Latina, what's really awesome about that clinic is that not only are you doing therapy in Spanish, but you're also getting supervision in Spanish. So someone who actually speaks Spanish is watching your tapes and giving you feedback in Spanish. And then the Sexual Gender Identities Clinic, which you'll be seeing clients struggling with issues surrounding sexual gender identity, or just folks who want to be seen in a safe place. Then there's several Stanford Faculty Staff Help Center. You're treating Stanford faculty and staff. We have a captive placement for several students in our child and adolescent department where you cycle through many different clinics. Our autism spectrum clinic, assessment, gender. There was eating disorders, peds, pediatrics, meaning medically ill children, et cetera, Palo Alto VA, et cetera. Then we also have many external sites that we utilize up at UCSF, San Francisco VA, Kaiser's, some of the universities up and down the Bay Area, et cetera. Next slide. So our internship match rates are awesome. They've been essentially 100% even during the year at the height of the match imbalance, which was 2012, when there was thousands of people unmatched. And I credit that. People always say, how have you been doing this so consistently? The biggest reason is truly, honestly, our amazing students, just incredibly raw material. And then I think, of course, our internship prep sequence really helps, but also on the heels of amazing alumni who are out there creating an incredible reputation for our program. And then I also kind of know my faculty, my team of internship advisors, we also know the formula of, okay, this kind of narrative and helping people really find the right sites to apply to. Because I think that's nationally, just working a lot with people from a lot of programs. I think when you go unmatched, it's very frequently due to poor site selection and just really not applying to the right programs for your narrative and your strengths. We do require APA accredited or CPA, meaning Canada, because we care. If you don't do an APA accredited internship, you will have significant career limitations. So you can't get licensed in all 50 states. You can't work in many types of institutions like the VA system, Stanford, all sorts of places. So we do require our students to do APA accredited internships and suggest whatever program you end up in that you make sure you go for an APA accredited internship. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of our class that just graduated. Really fun. They're all headed off to really cool postdocs, internships. But just people often ask me, so what is, are they all Californians who are all coming right from undergrad? Absolutely not. We typically, this is a really big decision. And I'd say it's actually pretty hard to get into the program if you're coming right out of undergrad. I don't want to deter any of you from applying. If you're just going to be wrapping up your senior year, please go ahead and apply. And we're not ageist. We're just, this is a really big decision. And we really like to see that people have had some type, they need to prove to us that they have made this decision really thoughtfully and have had some real experience in the field somehow, even if it's doing a crisis line, like something that takes what you've been learning academically into a real life picture for you, to know what your reactions, how you really feel when you're sitting across the table, room, phone, video from someone who's really suffering, and really know that this is what you really want to do, because it's a really expensive and time consuming, emotionally time consuming path. And so that's why typically people have been out from undergrad a couple years, typically before they're coming into this program. So our average age in the program is 25. We certainly have folks, we've had folks even in their 60s. I often will say, well, is it worth my time? Definitely. There is never too late to get your doctorate. Next slide, please. Licensing exam. I would say there's always a lot of stress out there. I hope you're not thinking about this yet, but there's a lot of stress. Oh, the licensing exam. It's kind of like a psych jury. It's really the easiest juncture of all of the grad school hoops. Our students do extremely well. You'll see here for all doc programs, this is the national pass rate is essentially 81%. And 96% of our students pass. This was the last time this data was published, I believe. There might have just come out with something else, but 96% of our students passed it on the first pass. And then they have subsections of different topic areas. This is the average score across all doc programs. And you'll see our scores are higher in every domain, including a little bit in research, which I think is pretty awesome considering it's a PsyD program, and at least half of this number are people in clinical PhD programs. So our students are hanging in there with the research and stats knowledge. Next slide, please. So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you can finish what you were saying. Sorry.
Well, how would you like to handle some questions? Would you like me to pause and then step aside and let you and Miriam and Jesse handle it, or?
Yeah, we're answering the questions in the chat.
Oh, you are. Great. Great.
Yes. So yeah, anything maybe that we can't answer that you can answer, we'll probably ask at the end.
Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead, Robin.
Yes. So I'm just going to go over our PsyD admissions, and this is a lot more detailed on our website. So just to go a little bit of overview. So some key dates to remember is for early consideration, it's November 15th. And then for regular consideration, it's January 7th. So students usually ask, what does early consideration mean? Does it mean you have more of an advantage if you apply early or not? It doesn't mean you get an early advantage. It means you're just one of the first to be looked at of your application. So usually we tend to tell students to apply and aim towards the early consideration deadline, just to make sure all your materials are in, because sometimes there is delays, especially for international students as well, getting their transcripts evaluated and such. But early consideration just means you will be one of the first to be looked at in your application. And usually, generally, the committee does look over the applications in the order that they were received. So that's sort of what we tell students. And then for recommended preparation, there are these courses in psychology that are recommended for students to take. And I will say that usually students that do have a background or educational background in psychology don't necessarily have to have been a psychology major, but have taken courses in them, do very well. And so these are recommended if maybe possibly you don't have any background in psychology courses. And then we also have a strong preference given to applicants with some form of clinical experience. So typically students that have clinical experience, it just means we want to make sure that you are aware this is a 5-year program and that you have that experience, because it is a possibility you come in and realize, oh, maybe this isn't something I wanted to do. And so this kind of just shows your commitment to the field and that you sort of know the commitment that you're going into with this program. And you could also reach out to me. I do have some examples of some clinical experience, because it could look a little bit differently than, you know, your typical clinical experience that you may think it might be. And then we also, on the application requirements here, everything will be submitted through PsyCast, which is a centralized application system. And so everything will be sent through PsyCast and nothing will be sent to PAU. And so we recommend that you ask for a resume, you make a resume, and or a CV, and then also a statement of purpose, and then 3 letters of recommendation. And typically letters of recommendation is someone that has known you more in a formal setting with professors, faculty, supervisors, or supervisors from a volunteer position. Things that are not accepted or anything where it's a personal relationship, where it's your family, friends, or therapists and such like that. So keeping it more in a formal setting. And then also we ask for you to send in all your official transcripts from any college or university that you have attended. And here we add this. So there are students that possibly are asking if you can apply to both the PsyD and the PhD program. You definitely can. The easiest way to do it is in the application. There is sort of like a checkbox that you could mark that you are interested in applying to the PhD program, and you would need to have a separate statement of purpose that is recommended. So you would have, you know, why you're interested in the PsyD program and why you're interested in the PhD program. If you are interested in applying after you submit your application, you could just reach out to admissions and then we'll just add you to be considered to the PhD program. And then you'll just submit all the materials to us. And then there's only also to add, there's at that point, there would only be 1 application fee as well. So you wouldn't have to worry about paying it twice.
And can I add just a quick comment back on the rec letters?
Yes.
So just sometimes it's interesting people's choice of rec letters, and the admissions committee who's reviewing files sometimes are confused where maybe they submit 3 letters from classes, like your professors, and yet you've done some clinical research or you've done some clinical work, even again, like on a text hotline or anything clinical, and there's no letter from a supervisor in that capacity. And so that automatically becomes a red flag. And so we do highly recommend that if you've done anything clinical, anything research related, that at least one of your letter reflects that, because we'll be able to see that you're a good student by your transcript already. And so we're really looking for the other aspects of you and those types of things. So we do really recommend that probably at least one of your letters is coming from a supervisor in that capacity.
Right, thank you. And so here is sort of the PsyD admissions timeline. So the application is expected to open on September 7th, and it's through PsyCast. So make sure everything is sent through PsyCast. And then it's the application review is ongoing. And so at that point, depending on how early you applied, the committee will read all the applications and then sort of make their decisions, from there. And then the early consideration again is November 15th. And then January 7th is the regular consideration timeline. And then for application materials, they're due January 21st. So that means even if we make sure you submit your application by January 7th, but if you have, letters of recommendations, your transcripts are still coming in, just make sure they're in by January 21st. And if they're not in by then, it just pretty much means we can't guarantee that the interview slots aren't filled up. So please make sure to, reach out as early as possible to your recommenders and especially if you're an international student too as well with your transcripts. And then typically our interview weekends at Stanford usually host them. They're between January and March. And then after that, there is a admitted students event. And usually that's when students get to know more of the faculty and sort of get to know the school. And then we ask if you are admitted and you want to accept our offer, make sure to do it by April 15th. And there's no actual fee, but it's just sort of a form that you fill out to let us know that you are considering attending. And one thing to know is it's a very popular question, especially in the inbox, of when will I hear back? I haven't heard back in several weeks. It's been months. And this program is very popular and it is known as being a very highly selective program. So we typically tell students that it could be several weeks. It could even be until spring when you hear back, even if you applied in November or in December. So I just want to let you know we are taking this very seriously. The committee does read every single application, and we want to make sure that you know that beforehand, and that anything that they know about your application, you will definitely hear back as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback on that, Robin, just because I know your team gets a lot of the questions like, what's my status? So I'll give you a little background inside of what's going on. So it really does help to the committee and the process to get your application in as early as possible. Really love that because we get approximately 700 applications for our 30 spots. And we interview, and each application gets reviewed by 2 to 3 faculty members. So that's a lot of application review time, and we really do holistic review. So it takes sometimes a half an hour per application times 2 to 3. So it really is just a laborious process, an enjoyable, but time laborious process. And so what happens is we really want a diverse cohort, meaning diverse in every capacity. And so what would really kill, one of the best things of the program is that generally we really have a collaborative, cooperative cohort structure. And part of the reasons that I think it really works is because we don't have 30 people who all want to do the same thing. We really have people coming from all sorts of backgrounds. And, even if we have 8 to 10 child-focused people, their foci within child is different. Some folks are really interested in autism spectrum disorder. Others are involved, really interested in pediatrics. And so it's such an incredibly complex puzzle that reviewing those 700 applications and thinking about how this would fit here and this would fit here, it's protecting the resources and it's protecting our culture, our nice collaborative culture where you're not having to fight over resources and practica and that type of thing. And so we're reviewing them, we're making comments, we have all sorts of things, and people will get put in a holding pattern, and that doesn't even mean that they were rated a B instead of an A. It was just, it's much more complex than, oh yeah, no, they can handle this. It's thinking about where they would fit in this cohort of 30 and wanting lots of different interests, backgrounds, and foci. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. So continuing on. So just to add some information, if you are sort of needing more information on exactly how to apply or the exact steps through PsyCast, we do have our deep dive on YouTube that you can look at. It's from last year and it's still very current. So that's one thing to look at. And then here is my email as well, since we do have a lot of questions, so you can feel free to reach out to me and I could discuss anything regarding your case or also connect you to a current student or anything during this admissions process as well. All right, and I guess that was the end of the slides. Now we could just look to answer some questions. I do see in the chat someone asked, what are the types of clinical experiences that admissions look for? So Dr. Hill, you could.
Sure. So as I was speaking, clinical experience, I think clinical experience itself is pretty hard to get with somebody who hasn't received their bachelor's yet, or even just with a bachelor's. So nobody's going to let you just go in and start doing individual psychotherapy, and that's a good thing. I'd say the most common things we see for folks who are coming in or applying with a bachelor's would be, as I mentioned, some type of hotline, a Trevor Project, local suicide lines, rape crisis, sexual assault type support services. And then with kiddos, it's pretty easy to get a behavioral, what they call them, but working with doing behavioral treatments, interventions with kids who have autism or on the spectrum, other developmental delays. Those are probably the most common things you see in like a straight up clinical fashion, or getting involved in some type of clinical research lab where they're doing clinical studies. And so then sometimes people with bachelor's level are able to get involved in the screening of potential participants. And so you're asking them questions, you're doing basically diagnostic interviews of, is this depression? Is this bipolar? That type of thing. I'd say that's the most common you'll see. And then in every cohort of 30, probably 6 to 8 are coming in with a master's degree. And so not necessarily a clinical master's, but so then those folks will have a different level of clinical experience.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I see that someone asked, do faculty prefer that we submit a resume or a CV? Is there any instance in which you recommend someone to submit one rather than the other?
I mean, I think as soon as you get started on, it's really just an aesthetic. And so I think, but if you're going down this path, you might as well start working and presenting yourself on a CV. So I would say go CV.
And the interview weekends, I believe they're still going to continue to be virtual.
So yes, they actually don't occur on the weekends. That's the PhD program has interview weekends. We will probably have several days during the middle of the week, and we do them via Zoom. And then we have in-person admitted students. Save the folks in the interview process the money from coming out, and just save that in-person piece for folks who've been admitted and trying to make those choices.
Thank you. And more questions?
This last, sorry, nice. I was going to answer that. You're all doing an amazing job of catching all these questions in there. Were there any questions that someone asked here that somehow got skipped? You can just.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through them. Yeah, there's 104 people in this Zoom. It's a lot of people interested.
Can you, do they have a capacity to raise their hand?
Yes. You could also too raise your hand as well, and then you could just unmute yourselves as well if you wanted to ask a question, which could be easier.
Yeah, please do. That would be great.
Or Cheyenne?
Hi, thank you guys for taking the time to answer all of these questions.
Sure.
And so my question was that, does the admission faculty prefer if you apply to one program over the dual application?
Doesn't matter at all. I prefer that people don't put all their eggs in one basket, and you learn a lot about yourself through application processes and figuring out, like when you're interviewing, oh, actually, that didn't feel right. Like, I don't think this is the right program, or I don't think this is actually the journey I want to go. So I prefer people cast abroad. And I say the same thing to my students applying to internship. that I think applying broadly will help you understand more about what you want and eventually land in the right program. It doesn't make you look like you don't know what you want, if that's the bottom line here.
Thank you.
Thank
Kelly?
you.
Oh.
And Kelly?
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry, my internet is not the greatest.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I was wondering, you mentioned how you pick a diverse cohort, so you look at people's interests and such. Is there room, say you come in with certain interests, but you want to explore other interests? Is that okay to get internships and different experiences with all different types of realms within, say, working with children? Or should you be more certain of the exact either like mental health disorder or field that you want to go into prior to?
Yeah. Fantastic question. And as I said at the forefront, we don't expect you to have it all figured out at this juncture. You've been exposed to a lot of things already, but you're going to learn things that you didn't even know existed in classes or in practica, and they're going to take you on a side road that you had no idea that might become your main career. So no, we just try at the beginning to, make sure we don't have 30 people who are interested in trauma and wanting to serve veterans. That would not be very good. So lots of room. In fact, I call this program a choose your own adventure, where you really are trying to dip your toe in different areas, be open. I think people, when I think about the people who are unhappy in graduate school generally, there's multiple reasons that could happen, but one of the reasons is, this almost this tunnel vision of it's this trajectory or bust, and I have to have this practicum in this year and this practicum in this year, and I have to work with this mentor or else my career's. Life just doesn't work that way. And so we expect a lot of growth and change in course. It usually, if you come in child, you're usually going to stay within the realm of child, although sometimes there's a couple flips where they start having individual psychotherapy with adults and like, oh, well, this is interesting. So so we expect some movement.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And Samantha?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm a little sick right now. So for the neuropsychology program, do you guys have an online program for neuropsychology, or is it some classes can be taken online and some in person? Just because I live in Riverside, so I was just curious about that.
The PsyD program is fully residential program. There are a couple classes here and there that we decided after Zoom actually worked better on Zoom, but it is a full-time in residence program. And I believe the PhD program is the same because we're accredited from APA as brick and mortar programs. So we can't be online programs.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm actually going to intentionally pop off this call because I'd love for you all to be able to speak to the two students and get the real student ask any questions that you might want to ask a real student without my presence here. So I'm going to pop off and let Robin and Miriam and Jesse carry the rest. So, but it was great meeting you all, and I look forward to seeing all of your applications.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Hill, for joining us.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So if anyone wanted to raise their hands about any questions to our current students about the experience or anything about them, or also any admissions questions, we have about 8 minutes that we could discuss. Samantha, you still have your hand up. Did you have like a continuing question or?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
How do I undo it?
It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Catherine?
Yeah, for the students, if anyone is not from California, I was wondering what the process of moving is like. if the school helps find housing, if you found the transition hard, just in general, how it was. Great question. Miriam and I are both transplants, so we did this transition. I think that one of the things, at least I can't speak totally to the PhD program, but within the PsyD program, they try to connect you with other students like who are already in the program and kind of support you with that. Another part typically of the interview process is you interview with a current advanced student. And so often that's also a good connection to get some insight about the moving process. I found that really helpful for my own move and kind of finding out about like different areas and neighborhoods and things like that. And they also try to connect within, like we use GroupMe as a platform with other students. And so if you're looking for like roommates or something like that, I know like people in our cohort in the first year room together. And so I think there's opportunity there as well. Does that answer your question, Catherine? Yes, thank you.
Yes, and I know in the PhD program, a lot of students are roommates, and I know that they create like Facebook groups and stuff like that. And I know a lot of students try to help with, you know, telling students like, oh, there's rooming here and stuff like that. So there's a lot of connection even before you start the program. So, and Paris?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much all for like taking your time to be here and putting on the session for us. So I actually had like a similar question about like the experience of the interview process. So just wondering if like those who have went through the interview process, or if you're like currently doing the interviews, like if you have any tips for how to prepare for that. And if there's anything that like has stood out to you from interviewing other students.
Great question. Trying to formulate an answer. In terms of the interview process, we both applied like peak COVID in like 2020, 2021. So it was entirely virtual, but sounds like that will be your experience too if you apply an interview this year. So in terms of like the day, Dr. Hill actually will send everyone like an individualized schedule. Then you meet in like a small group of prospective students. And then have individual interviews with faculty members and a fifth year student. So I personally have not interviewed prospective students for the program because we're not quite at that level yet in the program. But yeah, just having a good sense of why this program in particular feels like a good fit for you, your interests in the program, both clinically and when it comes to research, because as Dr. Hill mentioned, we are practitioner-scholar model. Yeah, and just really being yourself. I think it sounds like a tacky sort of cliched answer, but Dr. Hill and the admissions team, we really pride ourselves as a program for having people show up authentically, because it's really important in a cohort model with such few students, and as a clinician too, to just like be your authentic self. So hope that answered your question.
Thank you. And Asha?
Hi, sorry, I'm in the car. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. My question for the students was, what do you think made both of you competitive applicants going into this? And also, can you speak more about your clinical experience, just from your perspectives? What did you guys do prior to getting accepted, and what made you feel like you were competitive applicants?
Oh, I like don't love answering this question just because I don't love like saying I'm a competitive candidate. That feels a little funny, but I think that Miri and I both actually came in with masters, while I think that that's like not the case across the board for
people within our cohort. In fact, it's probably like less than half of our cohort that's the case. But I think that being able to speak to our experiences, that I know we both came in with clinical experiences in that way. I just like Dr. Hill mentioned, I worked on a sexual assault hotline. I led mindfulness groups. I did research. So like really having a vast array of experiences, I think was helpful. Miriam, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, this is a hard question because, again, I think it's just a really individualized process, and it's hard to not kind of hold your own experiences up against someone else's. And so I also don't love answering this question. I came in with my master in social work, so more clinical experience in that way, but absolutely is not a requirement to be considered for this program. And a lot of folks in our cohort too came in like from consulting, so totally different realm. And so it really is kind of a case-by-case experience, and there is so much in consulting that you can kind of apply to psychology. And so really wanting to encourage you to not like compare yourself in this process, and just how can you put your best foot forward in the application and interview process, I think is really important. But it's a great question.
All right, thank you, Jesse and Miriam. So the time is 12:59, so I think we should probably end it here just to respect everyone's time. So I just want to remind everyone, you could reach out to me. We could have an individual counseling meeting. I could connect you with the current student, as well as October 7th is our next open house. So feel free to come back and, ask more questions then. So thank you everyone for joining us.